up in Savannah, which is north of Pakse, and I was in the where we stayed in the customers' lounge area, having a few drinks, and it was about midnight, and the customer came up to me and he says, "Bruce," he says, "we've just had an Air Force C-130 get hit by a missile, and it had been over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and it basically had limped towards Pakse in a fairly safe area before they bailed out. But two of the people on board of the crew of the C-130 had bailed out over the trail earlier." And so I said, fine. We took off from Savannah, headed towards Pakse. And there were, I believe, 5 other H-34s and working out of Pakse. And we basically set up an orbit over the area where we knew the majority of the crew had gone down or had parachuted down. And it was pretty tight because Command and Control, the Air Force again, wouldn't give us permission to go and pick up the people. If I had to do it all over again, I would have said, go to hell. We're going to pick them up, because several of them were really hurt. They had broken legs, broken arms, because they had gone down in the jungle. But at any rate, they said, no, the Jolly Greens are on the way. Now this was like, now it's probably about 2:30 in the morning. And they told us just basically go back and refuel at Pakse, which we did, and they said they would call us when they were ready for us to come in and help make the pickup. Well, needless to say, we didn't get any sleep. We're waiting and waiting and waiting. And I think they called us, I remember it was about 6 o'clock in the morning. So we went charging out there, and sure enough, that's when the Jolly Greens showed up. So from midnight to 6 o'clock in the morning, I don't know what the Jolly Greens were doing, having one of their long briefings, I guess. So they went in and made the pickup, and we were still orbiting. And now they asked us, since there were 2 others that had parachuted out early over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, they asked us to go pick up these guys. Now this was danger. This was dangerous because the Ho Chi Minh Trail was where the bad guys really were, and this was going to be heavy. So we headed out there, 3 helicopters. Al Cates was in one, the captain, I was in another one, and then our SAR, which is going to be search and rescue, was Emmett Sullivan. The Sandys were there, and they were the guys that I really respect in the Air Force, because they got right in there and, shall we say, put the enemy to sleep. So we had no problem. On the way out there, though, I did have a problem. We were flying as high as we could get. As I remember, I think it was about 13,300 foot, and I couldn't climb anymore. And the flight mechanic was Filipino, and his English was not very good, but I thought he said we were receiving fire, because we were expecting anti-aircraft fire, you know. And so I looked out my window, and I didn't see any black puffs or anything like that. My co-pilot looked out his side, and he didn't see anything either. I said, what do you mean we're receiving fire? He says, we're on fire. I said, oh my God. Here we are in a magnesium aircraft, and I said, we'll never make it to the ground before we burn up. Well, the flight mechanic was really on his toes. He was able to put the fire out and disconnect the battery, and I got it off, and now we're running on just the generator. I guess most people would have had to turn around and go back, but I said, no, we're going. We're going for it. And my crew was behind me. They agreed. That's one thing, you always ask your crew if they want to continue on. So we did. We arrived in the area. Al Cates landed in a field to pick up the one down crew member from the C-130, and my guy was on a karst, which is a ridge line, and he couldn't move from where he was. I got over on top of him, and his parachute kept trying to get into my rotor blades. So this was making it very interesting. We got the hoist down, picked him up, hoisted him up into the helicopter. In the meantime, Emmett Sullivan was getting nervous. He was a SAR pilot. Emmett was funny. But we were able to climb out and start heading back towards Pakse. As soon as we got up to altitude again, my flight mechanic, who of course was Oriental looking, and we had this nondescript helicopter, and this poor Air Force guy is thinking, hey, the bad guys had picked me up, you know, I'm a prisoner. So the flight mechanic told me, he says, this guy's getting a little antsy, I don't know what to do. So I gave the controls to my co-pilot, and on the H-34, you could bend down, look behind underneath your seat to the cabin area. So I took off my helmet, looked down there, showed him my face, and he knew he was safe. It was American, and I handed him a tuna fish sandwich. Then he knew he was safe, and I found that very interesting. And we took him back, and one of the CH-53s, Jolly Greens, was waiting for him, and they didn't even thank us. They just took off on their own. So that's the way it goes. You still got to do your job.
Will be operating in the 20 alternate area. I'll be giving you a call every 30 minutes.
Lima, roger.